My name is Claire Liu, and I'm the CEO of Know Your Company. We are a software tool that helps CEOs and managers get to know their employees better, understand how they're really feeling, and help these CEOs and managers overcome growing pains. I'm curious though, for all of you here, whether you're a manager or an individual contributor, CEO, founder, when's the last time you've had a coworker or an employee tell you at work that they were struggling with a mental health issue? When was the last time, perhaps, that they came to you and said, I need to take work off because of some mental health things that I'm going through? My guess is probably hasn't happened in the last week. My guess is that it probably hasn't happened in the last month. My guess is that maybe it's never happened to a lot of you. And that if it has, you've often been the last to know. As we've been talking about today, many of us in this room just don't talk about mental health at work. And that there's this huge stigma that if you do have a mental health issue, that if you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed and you do need to take work off, you don't say it. There was a fascinating study that Deloitte did just the other year where they found that 95% of people who were surveyed, 95% of people had taken off work for a mental health related issue, but felt uncomfortable telling their employer. 95%. And my guess is, again, for those of you in this room, you're thinking, well, I haven't heard of it. No one's come to me with that, but I know it's there. Again, we are the last to know. So what I want to talk about today is how can we create an environment in our workplaces where we're not the last to know, where we can actually have employees feeling comfortable, feeling open and honest with us, and bringing these issues to light. How do we do that? Well, first of all, why does this happen in the first place, right? Why do employees feel like this is something we can't talk about? There's obviously the stigma of what mental health has been associated with, and that was discussed on the panel earlier today, but what I've found most interesting, especially related to the work that we do at Know Your Company, is that there are two main reasons for why employees choose not to speak up at work. The first, pretty obvious, you probably are thinking it, fear. Fear plays a huge role for why employees don't feel like they can come to you and say, hey, I need to take work off because I need a personal day to take care of my mental well-being. Or hey, I've actually been suffering from depression for the past few months. Fear, right? What if I get fired because of that? What if I'm not put on a project because of that? What if I get passed up on promotion? Or even, what if I'm just viewed differently? Fear. But even more powerful than fear as an obstacle to why employees don't speak up and why they don't tell you the things that you want to know is actually futility. So what studies have found is that futility, this feeling that even if I were to say something, nothing is going to change, nothing different will happen. Futility is actually found to be 1.8 times more powerful than fear as an obstacle to giving feedback. So for an employee who's suffering from a mental health issue or feeling this overwhelming stress at work and thinking that they need to take some time off for their mental well-being, this futility of, hey, even if I were to say that, is anything really going to change? Are any company policies going to change? Is my workload really going to change? Is my manager going to do anything different? Probably not. So why even say anything? So futility is one of those, is in fact the greatest obstacle. So keeping that in mind, then what can we do in this room as managers, as employers, as fellow coworkers to help create an environment where we can overcome both fear and futility, to help employees feel as though they can speak more openly and honestly about mental health? Well, it's three things. The first, also touched on earlier today, is this concept that I like to call going first, which is that if you are a leader and you expect your employees to be vulnerable with you, you have to be vulnerable with them first. It starts with you, and you as a leader have to model the behavior that you want to see. So by going first, what this means is perhaps you admit to your team that you're managing that you're seeing a therapist once a month. Perhaps you admit to your team that you've suffered from mental health issues in the past, or people in your family have. Or even less severe, perhaps you just admit to your team, hey, we've had a really crazy work season, and I know that I've been putting a lot of stress on you, feel free to take a personal day. I know I will be. Admit that you yourself are vulnerable and susceptible to the same work pressures and to the same potential causes and possibilities for mental health. The second thing that you can do to create a more open environment where employees are going to be more willing to come to you with these issues is to simply ask more specific questions. We've been talking a little bit about the role that questions and employee engagement surveys can play in helping to get a lot of these insights, but oftentimes, if you reflect on perhaps the last employee engagement survey that you've run in your company, how many of those questions were related to mental well-being versus innovation, versus profit, versus company direction? Think about that. Are you asking questions like, are you afraid of anything at work? Which, by the way, we found in Know Your Company, 67% of employees do feel they are afraid of something at work. Are you asking, when's the last time you felt stressed or anxious in your one-on-one? Are you asking, are we doing enough as a company to support mental well-being and health in our organization? Ask specific questions. It starts there. You're not going to get the answers that you're looking for unless you start asking those questions. And then the last thing that you can do to create this open and honest environment where employees are going to be coming to you more regularly if they are suffering from these issues is simply to act on something small. At the end of the day, talk is cheap, and what really matters is what you do. And so in your company, what policies do you have that show your commitment to mental health and well-being? And sure, yes, yoga classes in the company are great and meditation sessions are great, but I'm talking about real policies like allowing employees to take a personal day for mental health once a month or once a quarter, or funding EAP programs that allow for employees to actually have coverage to services like counseling and depression services. Or simply, it doesn't even have to be anything to do with money, because those things cost money. And maybe in your company you're thinking, well, Claire, how do I act in a way where we don't have to sort of set aside thousands of dollars to fund a certain program? Well, here's the thing. You can act as simply as putting forward a positive note to when someone does tell you that they're suffering from a mental health issue. So for example, I run a leadership newsletter and interview series. It's called The Heartbeat. And one of the CEOs that I interviewed, you may know him, his name is Ben Congleton. He's the CEO of OLARC. And he recently made headlines because an employee of his asked for a personal day off to take care of her mental health. His response was, absolutely, and thank you so much for reminding all of us the importance of prioritizing our mental health. This employee, she then took this email, she posted it on Twitter, and it went viral. He got interviewed by the Today Show, it was all over Business Insider, you can look it up, you can look up Ben Congleton, OLARC in the email. But point being, this small action of an encouraging note of thank you, yes, go do that, we believe in that. That's a positive step, that's taking action as well, and you don't have to spend a single dollar. And that in itself shows your commitment to wanting employees to speak up on these mental health issues. So remember, if you don't want to be the last to know about mental health issues in your company, if you want to be building an environment where employees are coming to you instead of you finding out last minute or maybe never, remember to go first, ask specific questions, and then to just act on something small. Thank you.